You've probably heard a lot about rewilding lately. It makes you think of huge landscapes, wolves returning, and great herds of bison. And it carries the most important message we can hear right now, that nature can restore itself if we just give it the chance. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be on a massive scale, and it doesn't have to be in the middle of nowhere. Rewilding can happen right in your own backyard, in a city park, anywhere there's a tiny patch of space. And it can happen really fast. That's transformative not just for nature and the climate, but for us. How do I know? Well, for the last couple of decades, I've been helping to rewild spaces both big and small. When my husband Charlie was 21, he inherited a 3,500-acre farm in the busy southeast of England. The Knepp estate is on terrible land for farming. He was already losing money, but Charlie had trained as a farmer, so for 17 years he'd tried to make it work. By 1999, we were £1.5 million in debt. We knew we had to do something radically different. We wanted to work with nature, not fight against it all the time. So we began to rewild. Europe, just like every other continent, was once home to huge numbers of free-roaming animals. Animals we hunted to extinction or close to it. Their presence shaped the land. They cleared forests, opened up wetlands, created grasslands, churned the soil, and spread seeds. We were so excited by large-scale rewilding projects in Europe that showed when you bring these animals back, nature can recover and biodiversity can rocket. But could it work on a smaller scale? On a farm like ours that had been plowed and drenched with chemicals for decades? Could we bring our own land back to life? The first steps were so much fun. We pulled up all the internal fences, smashed the old drains, and let the water sit where it always wanted to. The field started to fill with thorny bushes, and soon trees began to grow again. Then we fenced the whole area and introduced our free-roaming animals. Old English Longhorn cattle stood in for their extinct ancestor, the aurochs. Exmoor ponies for the extinct tarpan. Tamworth pigs for wild boar. We also brought in red and fallow deer and eventually beavers. The results were beyond our wildest dreams. Everywhere these animals went, life just surfaced in their wake. Our land became this amazing kaleidoscope of complex, shifting habitats, the kind of messy edges that wildlife absolutely loves. Soon we were hearing nightingales and turtle doves, birds that are on the verge of extinction in Britain. We had bats, owls, dung beetles, and butterflies homing in on us as if from nowhere. And our soil was restoring itself too. Suddenly we were pulling down huge amounts of carbon, whereas before, under the plow, we'd just been releasing it. All of this happened in just 5 years. We looked at our land in amazement. It was like it was breathing a huge sigh of relief. And so were we. We could just sit back and watch the miracle of the earth restoring itself. Of course, in our small project, we couldn't just let the animal numbers grow forever. Biodiversity thrives when there are neither too many grazing animals nor too few. In vast wilderness areas, nature handles this on its own. But we don't have wolves, lynx, and bears in southeast England. So we had to become the apex predator. And that gave us a surprising new income stream, wild range meat. That, along with wildlife tourism, became one of the ways we financed rewilding. It completely turned the fortunes of the estate around. Inspired by Knepp, hundreds of thousands of acres are now being rewilded in the UK on land that is ungreat for modern farming. But, of course, not everyone has hundreds of acres to play with. We started getting messages from people who seen the magic of Knepp and wanted to know if they could rewild their back garden, their schoolyard, or their local park. The answer is yes, you can. Our house has a Victorian walled garden, about an acre in size, that for years was just a monoculture lawn. Lawns have become a worldwide obsession since the 1950s, when artificial fertilizer, weed killers, and mowers became common. We looked again at our high-carbon, high-maintenance green desert and wondered why on earth we had it. 3 years ago, we decided to rewild it. Today, it's a wildlife haven. In just 3 years, biodiversity has increased by 35%. Rewilding a garden isn't just about closing the gate and letting it go. It takes intentional steps to create the right balance of plants and the kinds of habitats that wildlife loves. So, here's what we've learned. These are our 3 top tips for making your garden or green space wilder. First, the earth is not flat. In nature, you have mounds from anthills and molehills, pits dug by pigs and wallows made by rolling bison. Creating lumps and bumps makes patches of sun and shade, damp and dry. This creates conditions for a much wider range of plants, which in turn creates more opportunities for wildlife. We happen to be demolishing some old farm buildings, so we had the diggers dump hundreds of tons of crushed brick and concrete onto our perfect lawn. You might have a patio or a piece of concrete you can pull up. Crush it, mix it with sand, and you have the perfect free-draining base for a dry garden. In a dry garden, you can grow wildflowers that love poor soil. And since you're not watering or fertilizing, you're saving time and money and helping the planet. We've planted 1,100 different plants, mostly from dry parts of the world, but you don't need that many. You can make a huge impact just by choosing plants that insects love, extending the pollinating season, and supporting forgotten creatures like night-flying moths, which are some of our greatest pollinators. And all these plants are growing alongside our native self-seeding wildflowers. We vowed never to use the word weed again. You can learn to love your dandelions in clover. Second, think like a herbivore. A gardener's job is to never let one single plant take over. If you do, you lose the variety that creates species richness. So when you're pulling out the plants that are getting too dominant, think of yourself as a wild boar, rooting out thistles. When you're pruning your roses, you're the nibbling teeth of a deer. Thinking of yourself as an animal in an ecosystem is incredibly freeing. It lets you be more holistic, more organic, and a lot messier. There's still room for a lawn in a wilder garden, but think of it as part of a mosaic. Consider a wildflower or chamomile lawn. And when you mow, be the cow. Graze some areas very short, but leave others long to protect small mammals and birds. Mix it up, grow a Mohican. Finally, find life in death. In nature, death is a primary source of life. But in a garden, we get rid of anything that dies. Leaving dead wood and piles of leaves creates fantastic habitat, but it also creates natural fertilizer for next year's growth. And leaving seed heads instead of obsessively deadheading provides vital food for birds over the winter. In the UK, we have 23 million private gardens. Together, they cover an area 4.5 times larger than all our national nature reserves combined. And most of those gardens are dominated by a green desert lawn. Imagine if all those gardeners thought differently. If they put away the artificial fertilizers and herbicides and started to think of themselves as a keystone species, as a mole or an ant or an earthworm. Like this amazing city gardener who's obsessed with bees, bumblebees, leafcutter bees, masonry bees. We tend to think of bees as scary, but if you watch them, they're just gentle, sensitive creatures going about their business. You can fall in love with them. This is our neighbor's garden, now attracting nightingales and tawny owls. We can rewild balconies in cities, even in high-rise blocks. A single window box can become a nature reserve. We can rewild cemeteries, churchyards, bus shelters, and whole streets. We can rewild our public monuments. This is the Tower of London, now Wildflower Meadow buzzing with bees. And this is the Field Museum in Chicago, once a green desert and now a vital stop for migrating birds. We can have entire buildings erupting in plants, bringing life to our windowsills, capturing carbon, producing oxygen, cleaning the air, insulating us in winter, and cooling us in summer. So much of rewilding is about changing our aesthetic. It's about questioning what we've always been taught to think of as beautiful and normal. It's about shedding our obsessions, especially our desire to always be in control. Rewilding is about embracing the messy and the unpredictable. It's about letting go. It's about rewilding ourselves. Thanks for watching. If you're inspired to bring a little wildness into your life, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.